Hey guys, it's Ian at SS8000 Cars, and in the drive today we have the BMW 3-litre DM Sport and the Land Rover Discovery TD4. Now, I always said that this channel focuses on sports cars, so you might say to yourself, even although the BMW has the sport title and this is the Discovery Sport, it's hardly a sports car either. But I thought since I had the Discovery, I'd do a very quick video on showing you round both, see whether these are cars that you might practically be interested in. They are quite sporty for an SUV, but probably not in the way that the Porsche Macan is sporty. You really can take the Porsche Macan by the scruff of the neck and race it round the country lanes. I think with these two you're always aware of their bulk. Although the suspensions do a great job, they both weigh very close to 2 tons. Now, they're different. The Discovery Sport is the very latest model, and this one's a 66 plate, so it's only a few months old. The X3 is now 5 years old, so it's not the latest version, but it is the current model. But somehow, despite having the same remit, they do different things. Now, the first thing to notice is you can probably see the Discovery is set right off the 20-inch wheels and tyres. So you sit even further up in the Discovery than you do in the X3, which as an SUV already has an elevated driving position. But I think the Discovery, because of its off-road capability, I suppose it is always going to be trying to do two things. And I have to be honest with you, although the X3 gives you the elevated driving position, I'm not utterly sure it really is ever meant to be an off-road car. Now, we run our X3 on winter tyres, so when you have slippery conditions, and really any temperatures below 7 degrees is where the benefits from putting winter tyres on a car start to be felt, in terms of reducing the length of time in slippery conditions to brake from any speed. The braking distance are amazingly shorter than they are when not driving winter tyres. So this one has the winter tyres, and I am utterly sure that in the X3 you could get yourself into trouble even with the winter tyres if going up a mountain slope. But for every other use, the winter tyres really do give you a lot of flexibility. Now, the X3 is quite roomy inside. Again, the latest version, they haven't changed inside in any way. Some of the outside panels at the front, so the spoiler has been redesigned on the very latest model, but otherwise they're identical. And you can see it's actually quite a driver-centric environment. So you've got your speedometer and rev counter with the diesel gauge on one side of the speedometer and the temperature gauge, the coolant gauge, on the right-hand side of the rev counter. One of the things I do like about this car is it has a really wide screen for your sat nav, and it allows you to split the screen and still leave you with a decent size navigation screen running at the same time. I find that quite useful. And then we can go and have a look in the back. So you can see that there's quite a lot of legroom. So if I sit behind myself, so to speak, I could go a long journey like this, and I am comfortable, and my knees are nowhere near the seat here. And there's a bit of headroom in the car. Well-spec'd car, this one. Has absolutely everything, including the panoramic sunroof, which opens, although I've only got it half covered at the moment. But if you look from the outside, you can see that there's a good side glass area that actually goes all the way to the back of the rear compartment. And then, if we excuse the cars being dirty, this is a bit of an impromptu video, but if you look inside here, it's a good space. You know, it's really enough for, I'd say, 4 pieces of luggage with other soft bags as well. So it's a good size, good family car. It's running on 19-inch wheels, and they only just look big enough, don't they? I mean, I think this car is available on 17 and 18-inch wheels. That's just a good braking system. I really do like the 6-cylinder diesel engine. Although you can tell it's a diesel when it first fires up, when you're on the go, once the car is warmed up, both on the motorway and on any of the A roads, you really would be hard pressed to know you were driving a diesel. So we come over to the Discovery. The Discovery, as you can see, has been off-road, has 20-inch wheels. The tyres themselves are not as big. They're 245s all round, whereas the X3 has 245s on the front and 275s on the rear. I think the Discovery Sport looks more modern than the X3, I have to say. I really do like the way the windows appear to sweep round at the rear of the car. And overall, the dimensions, although quite close to the X3, I'd say the Discovery Sport is slightly bigger. It's very difficult to know which you prefer. Seats aren't quite so comfortable. The seats in the X3 are absolutely wunderbar. They grip you, they're sports, they've got sports bolsters. Take you over to have a very quick look so you can see. And the contrast stitching makes the car feel just a bit more luxurious perhaps, but these areas here and the bolsters here, they really support you. And it has the 18-way adjustable electric seats as well, this one, so very easy to operate. And these are a little bit more like armchairs, you know, they're not, although they do have side bolsters, they don't really hold you in position. Maybe if I was a few stone heavier, I'd have a better feel. And then if I come into the car, or you come in with me into the car, you can see inside again we have a panoramic roof and a nice dash. I like the dash. Somehow the interface on the central screen doesn't appear to be as good as it is in the X3. The X3's is a widescreen, 9 inches across, whereas I don't know what this is, but I'd say that's a lot less than 9 inches. But again, this is keyless go. They're both keyless go, both start-stop. Start this up by pressing the button. This car is a mixture of touchscreen and buttons. Now, I'm personally quite critical of the new generation of cars that are all touchscreen, because in a touchscreen system you have to navigate your way through different menus to get at different components. So in the McLaren 540C, for example, which we've had actually for almost 8 weeks recently, in that, even to put the heated seats on, you've got to go into your climate control system and you've got to touch the button. It's quite difficult to do when you're driving along on an open road, especially if the road is a bit bumpy, and you've got to take your eyes off the road. So I really do think buttons have a place in cars, despite the fact that it maybe doesn't look quite so modern. One of the things I love about this car is the center dial here, which actually comes out when you start the engine. So watch. I really like that. So you can set it up from park to reverse, neutral, drive and sport. Really nice actually. It has a really nice touch. So when you switch the engine off again, of course it goes down. I think it's rather smart. I mean, it's probably doesn't make a huge amount of difference, but I do rather like that. Again, this car has the panoramic roof, glass roof, but it doesn't open. Now, I think if I was going to have a roof, I'd always have one that opened. I don't know whether there are options in this car or not, but one thing about Land Rover which really does impress me is the quality and the fitment of everything inside the car. It's just really nice. Everything feels very tactile and it feels solid. You know, there's nothing rattling. Absolutely everything feels like it's going to last, which I suppose in a vehicle that could well be on a farm for most of its life, I suppose you need that. So again, comfortable driving position, although as I said, not quite as comfortable perhaps as the X3. And then in the rear you have the advantage in this car of having 7 seats. So these seats pull forward. I could maybe show you very quickly, as in this one. So they pull forward, and of course that pulls forward to allow access, and those are the rear seats there, which I won't put up, but they're okay. I mean, I think it would be a bit of a faffle to actually get into them, but you know, I think with most people it's one of those things that you don't use every day, so therefore, you know, if you use once a month, you can put up with the inconvenience. So you really probably wouldn't go that far unless you had young children in the rear. Okay, so if I get into the back, I'm getting to the back now, of course, with it in its front position, but I'm going to put it back. There you go. Even more room in this, as you can probably see. It really is very comfortable. So I think out of the two of them, it really is roomy in the back here. And it's very airy in the back as well, although I think because this is a fixed roof, so it doesn't have to slide, it comes back slightly further than in the X3. I actually had the cover in the X3 about here, which is why it looked like a normal glass sunroof, but in fact it is the panoramic sunroof in the X3 too. So, you know, it's a really nice quality car, and you could go a long distance in this and enjoy it. Now, I suppose the elephant in the room perhaps is the tendency that they have now to downsize in terms of both the capacity and the cylinders of the engines, because they've got turbochargers available to them. And of course, turbochargers, you don't need the same capacity, and on top of that, turbochargers give out an immense amount of torque. And torque, I always think, is useful when driving in top gear on a motorway, because you get instant reactions and it'll take you up to the next 20 miles an hour increment faster than a car that you've got to drop a gear or two, and that's in the top gear. So both cars are 8-speed boxes. So I just, my own personal feeling is this engine in the Discovery is just not a patch on the engine that they've got in the X3 3-litre diesel, because it's a 6-cylinder, and I think that just makes the difference. I don't think that the 4-cylinders sound as good. I mean, they're quiet enough, but under half or quarter throttle you hear the diesel. It sounds a bit like a cab. Once you're on the motorway and your foot's right off, you can cruise at 70-75 at 1800 revs, and it's as quiet as quiet could be. But it's just in everyday use. I mean, you're not on the motorway the whole time. You're driving through town, you're driving through the countryside, you're having to slow down, speed up, and that's where you hear the diesel clatter. I don't think you can get this car with a 6-cylinder engine, whereas the X3 has always offered both 4 and 6-cylinder engines. It has to be said that you can't have either of these models with a petrol car. Now, what you've probably noticed is the smaller cars, they're all starting to have 2 or 3-cylinder petrol engines now, because they're finding, the manufacturers, I suspect, are worried potentially now the emissions that come from diesels are known to be more harmful than petrol. They're starting to invest in much more efficient, smaller capacity petrol engines to produce and give the same sort of fuel consumption. I'm glad that they have finally realised this, and maybe over a period of time this will affect diesel engines even on these mid-range SUV cars. Again, the same sort of cover over. You can see that there's the inertia seat belts here for the rear passengers. They are actually a bloody nuisance, if you'll excuse my language, because when you're pulling obviously you're going to have this across most of the time because you don't want people seeing into the boot. But when you pull it back, what does it do? It catches the seat belt. So if you're actually doing what I'm doing and holding a camera, and I think quite often when you come to a boot you're actually holding something, you've got to push them out the way before you can push it in. But overall, not a bad boot size area. It is not as big as the X3. So I suppose given the cars are a very similar size, I think you've got more room on the inside of the car in the rear seats here than you do have in the X3. But in the X3 you've got a bigger boot. I like the looks of the Discovery Sport. I think it's a really, really good looking car. Maybe a little bit more bland. I think the X3 is maybe a little bit more purposeful from the front, but again we're talking about SUVs here. But from every other angle, I slightly prefer the looks of the Discovery. They both have cameras, so rear vision cameras for when you're reversing, but it's just a much easier vehicle to place, the X3, so which is quite nice, because when you're maneuvering in town, you know, you can put this through quite tight spaces. In the Discovery Sport you cannot see the extremes of the car very well, so you're always slightly guessing when going through a gap. Alright guys, I really do hope that's useful, because again, I know you guys are all going to be in the market for both your supercars, your sports cars, but also your support cars, we'll call them. Cars that can do everything, go anywhere, and are unbelievably reliable. Overall, I probably don't have a preference. I think for spirited driving, the BMW is slightly better, but I think the Discovery on a day-to-day basis may well take the overall accolade, and it certainly does look more modern than the X3, although I rather imagine that the new X3 can't be too far round the corner. Okay guys, well, it's Ian from SS8000 Cars signing off. Appreciate you subscribing.